Football is full of many grass to grace stories. The sport's really elevated so many people from absolute penury to wealth, power, and fame. Let us take a look at 7 football players who came from absolutely nothing. Number 1, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. The 40-year-old Swede seems really powerful and domineering right now, so you may find it a little hard to believe that he came from nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. His parents weren't only poor, his mother was a criminal. Zlatan was living with his mother after his parents got a divorce when he was only 2 years old. So when his mother got arrested, he was taken by social services. When he was 9, he was sent to go live with his dad. But his dad's wasn't a place for any child to grow up. His father was a poor alcoholic who didn't care about any of his children. When Zlatan was in his care, he didn't care about if or when he ate. All he cared about was his beer, and nothing else. All this led Ibrahimovic into shoplifting and petty thieving just to survive. Then football saved him. But even that wasn't easy. As a young teenager, he was a regular for Malmo, but at 15, he strongly considered quitting football generally to go find work at the docks because things weren't going as he hoped they would. However, his coach convinced him to keep going, and he should be extremely thankful to that guy because now Zlatan Ibrahimovic is worth close to $200 million. And of course, he's easily one of the biggest superstars of the modern game. Number 2, Luis Suarez. Suarez is another person who is a victim of a poor and broken home. The former Barcelona man grew up in a very poor city in Uruguay, and things worsened for him when 2 sources of income turned to one after his father left him and his 6 siblings with his mother. He was just 9 years old when this happened, and it affected him in a whole lot of ways. Some professionals said that his background could be one of the reasons that the striker used to often have fits of anger and aggression on the pitch. Growing up, the kid channeled all his sadness and frustrations into football, even though he even couldn't afford trainers to play with. But I guess, it all finally paid off. He's now won multiple trophies and individual awards across Europe, and in addition to that, he's widely referred to as the greatest striker of his generation. Number 3, Alphonso Davies. Not only was Alphonso Davies born poor, he was born a refugee. His parents, who were Liberians, fled the country in 1999 because of the Second Liberian Civil War, which killed hundreds of thousands of citizens. So Alfonso's parents found themselves in a refugee camp in Ghana, where they gave birth to him in 2000. The Bayern defender grew up in the refugee camp, and life was extremely hard out there. There was hardly food to eat and no clean water either, so he and his 6 siblings would often go days without eating. Life was extremely difficult in Ghana, but going back home to Liberia wasn't an option, because that would have meant he and his siblings would have had to carry guns and join the war. However, a big break came for Fonzie when a resettlement program came about in the mid-2000s. His family benefited from that program, and that was what helped them relocate to Canada in 2005. Even though their fortunes didn't automatically change, things started looking up for him. Almost immediately after relocating, Alfonso found football, and that same year, he joined the Edmonton Internationals. He kept working his way up until he finally got signed to the United Soccer League at age 14. He quickly made huge strides in North America, and that earned him a move to Bayern Munich in 2018. And the rest, as they say, it's history. Number 4, Neymar Jr. Neymar is currently one of the biggest, wealthiest, and most influential footballers in the world. But all that didn't come easy to him. The kid grew up poor, extremely poor. If you've seen his new Netflix documentary, you're going to have an idea of the kind of conditions he grew up in. His father played professional football, but he really didn't make it big. Also, that was back when football wasn't half as lucrative as it is now. So when Neymar Sr. and his wife had kids, they weren't very financially capable of taking care of them. And as a matter of fact, it was their little boy Neymar Jr. who brought them their first taste of financial freedom. They found out how talented this kid was extremely early in his life and pushed him to play football. When he was just 11 years old, Neymar was already the breadwinner of his home. He was already playing for Santos at the time, and it was proceeds from his wages that the De Silva family used to buy their first ever property. He took a lot of responsibility upon himself from an extremely young age because of the state of his family's finances. But luckily for him and his family, that poor kid grew up to be one of the biggest superstars of the sport, and has continued to shoulder the financial responsibilities of his family ever since then. Only difference is that now, he's doing it a lot easier than when he was 11. Number 5. Angel Di Maria. Di Maria grew up in Santa Fe, Argentina, and as a kid, he and his siblings were already working at a coal yard to try and support their parents financially. Football was seen in South America as a quick pathway to success for a lot of young kids. So being the only son of his parents, Angel was enrolled in a local football academy, Torito, at the tender age of 3. But keeping up was still really difficult for him. They couldn't afford to buy him boots, jerseys, or anything he needed. So while he was playing football, he still had to continue working at the coal yard. School? Not even an option. Anyway, Di Maria maintained his focus and kept on working on himself. And at the age of 19, he finally earned a move to Europe and was able to shoulder all the financial responsibilities of his family. He was only a teenager, but he was able to tell his parents to stop working and even bought a house for them and his sisters. 6. Sadio Mane. You're really going to struggle to find a more inspirational story in football than that of Liverpool forward Sadio Mane. From abject poverty to becoming European and African champion. His parents weren't only poor, they were also really strict. His father forbade him from being a footballer and insisted that he focused on becoming a teacher. As far as he was concerned, football wasn't a responsible career path, and he wasn't going to let his son go that way. Even Sadio's friends whom he played football with in his village discouraged him, telling him that he was never going to actually become a professional footballer. So, one fateful day, 15-year-old Mane woke up, packed his bags, and ran away from home to go follow his dreams. With not even a penny to his name, Sadio Mane traveled to the country's capital to look for footballing opportunities. When he got to his first trial, the scout in charge made fun of his tattered shorts and boots and how different he looked from the other boys. But his talent and ability stood him out so much that the scouts, they just had to pick him in spite of all of it. By the time he was 17, he joined Generation Foot in Dakar, where he impressed and earned a move to Metz in France at 19. It was when he landed in Metz that he first picked a phone call to his mom since running away from home. "Hello, Mama. I'm in France," were the first words he said to her. She was in total disbelief. How her little boy managed to follow his dreams in spite of his poor background and the many discouragements was difficult to fathom. Now that the little boy from Bambali in Senegal is a Premier League Golden Boot winner, UCL winner, and most important to him, African champion. Number 7. Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the greatest players to have ever graced the sport, and frankly the wealthiest footballer there's ever been, also came from absolutely nothing. His mom was a cook and his dad was a gardener. Together, they could barely feed him and his 3 siblings. So they'd go hungry for several days while all sharing a room. They were that poor. As a matter of fact, Cristiano's parents were so poor that his mother strongly considered abortion when she was pregnant with him. And that was all because she felt that he would be too much of a financial burden. Ironically, he, the last child of the family, became their key to financial freedom and generational wealth. And they all have one man to thank for that, the Ronaldo's family doctor. Cristiano's mother was already ready for the abortion, but her doctor insisted that he wasn't going to perform it. So, she ended up keeping it. After he was born, things were extremely difficult for him and his family. Apart from the hunger and lack of basic needs, Cristiano got expelled from school as a teenager. Then, when he left that to completely focus on football, he got diagnosed with tachycardia, a heart problem which threatened to end his football career before it even started. But young Ronaldo persevered in spite of all these things that were just out to stop him. He underwent surgery and immediately got back to training. And when he was just 16, he had already made it to Sporting CP's senior team. He started earning big bucks in the Portuguese First Division, and from there, he single-handedly pulled his family out of poverty. But to think that a man who's now gone on to become the highest goal scorer in the history of football and frankly the most popular human on Instagram could have been aborted because of poverty is kind of a chilling realization. And I guess we all need to find that doctor and thank him, because imagine never having had the privilege to watch CR7. Wow, how different the world would have been. Speaking of, think for a minute how different the entire world of football would have been if these 20 mistakes were never made. Go ahead, click on the video and check out the mistakes to see just how brave they were.